I was going to say, where have I never been? And then you were going to say Hong Kong. And then I was going to say, what are we talking about today? Then you were going to say Hong Kong. Hi everybody, welcome to Archie Marathon. Today we're indulging me. I've never been to Hong Kong. He was born there, and Herzog de Meuron are one of my favourite architects, and he's going to tell me all about Herzog de Meuron's big compound.
Tai Kwun Centre for Heritage and the Arts in Hong Kong.
We have to wait until he's finished. Crunch, crunch, crunch.
I'm hungry.
We're having wasabi peas. Do you want some? We're having wasabi peas for lunch and beer. Just the usual. How's that chair sound?
That's you farting. What are you on about?
Yeah, what tiny little micro farts. It's a real medical condition. Don't put that in. All right, so Herzog de Meuron, probably one of the most important architects in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
I would say. The Tate Modern in London, the Bird's Nest in Beijing.
That's right, the National Stadium.
Yeah. Barcelona, they did that great floating.
The Forum Building, which is now the Science Museum.
Yeah.
And Kaiser Forum in Madrid.
One of my favourite buildings that I've never been to, but it's what Union House is kind of based on, this idea of putting something new and simple directly on top of the facade of the old building.
And if you want to watch the Union House video, it's just up here.
No, it's there.
Way over there.
Yeah. It's over here. It's not there. It's there.
It's that corner. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you pointed there. Don't click there, click there. So Herzog de Meuron. Love it. They're great. They experiment with materials, they experiment with spatial types, they experiment with light, all the fundamentals of good architecture. They get right into it and really pick it apart.
And also a very strong concept as well.
Yeah.
And they are very strict in the way they drive the concept.
Yeah. And a big company, big global studio that is really run from the top down. You can tell that they are both still very involved.
So it's in Central District. This was 1841-42 when Hong Kong was lost to the British from the Chinese. And the site is on the hill. It's quite an imposing site. And they built the police headquarters, the magistrate courts, and the prison, the Victoria Barracks and Victoria Jail. And that established the law and order. So this site for a long time has been closed off to the public because it is, well, you know, unless you've got business with with the law, you wouldn't be in it. So it's quite a walled off compound that you don't go into. And Tai Kwun is the name, the colloquial name for that whole area because there's a series of buildings that's there on a hillside, and it was quite imposing.
So it was a police station and a prison. It is no longer those things? When did it finish?
The prison, well, it's decommissioned in 2006.
Oh, it's quite recently.
Quite recently, yeah.
So these are British colonial buildings that have been operating in the same function until 2006.
Yeah, and pretty much it started, I mean, the buildings have changed and added over time, but it started pretty much the day the British got hold of Hong Kong.
So would these be considered heritage buildings?
Definitely, yes. And Hong Kong does not have a good record of dealing with heritage buildings.
So I guess what you're saying is this stuff's just knocked down. You just erase whatever's there so you can build something tall and dense.
Yeah, or that is just the facade being kept. But most of them have been erased. Most typology of housing, buildings, completely erased. So or that is just literally just a facade.
So if there is something that's considered of heritage value, which is rare by the sound of it, typically you just keep the front facade, so it's a bit of decoration, and then you just...
I think the interesting thing about heritage is that it's the use of the building should somehow be understood. The part of that story is to be understood. And a lot of that erasure, if you're just keeping just the aesthetic, just the look of it, you lose that story. You know, it just becomes a thing that's just sitting there as an artifact, as opposed to somewhere that has embedded memory and history. This is one of the few instances in Hong Kong where I've seen they actually did the heritage well, especially dealing with the colonial history. And that's something definitely worth visiting because you don't get anything like it in other places, because this is definitively Hong Kong as a former colony of Britain.
So doing heritage well, that can be really subjective. So what do you mean in terms of that? Have they just restored it all into its original state? Is that what Herzog de Meuron did?
Original state is an interesting concept itself. What is original at what point in time? They have reused, they have restored, so that they're not falling apart. They have kept a lot of the users, not that there's no longer prison, but they still have all the cells and everything, and reinterpreted in terms of the usage being contemporary art space and other cultural functions.
And so it just looks like an old police station and an old prison. Doesn't look like anything new?
No, not really, except for the two cubes, the two volumes they've added on top. And that's the JC Cube and JC Contemporary, which is the Contemporary Art Museum. And they both have the same language. And they're in the back corner of the site where the prison volumes are. Unlike mainland China, where we have the previous episode where we talked about some of the best work. Some of the best work tends to be the local architects, where the star architects, the international architects, are the ones who's doing, they're kind of big projects, but they're okay. Hong Kong is, if anything, does rely on sort of good quality star architects, because I think there is a lot more lenience to them doing something different than what is expected of the Hong Kong model. One of my inspirations for doing architecture originally was the first time seeing Hong Kong Bank, or HSBC headquarters by Norman Foster. Because it's one of the first I've seen that is not just your standard building. It had something special going on. Surely it's one of the most expensive buildings ever built per square meter rate, but it's special. But what's interesting about the site was that historically no one goes there unless you have business. So it's quite closed off, it's walled off. Since 2006, it's this little oasis of open space where everything was grown up around it. These are still only 5 stories or less, and some pretty mature trees there as well. So now is actually free, it's publicly accessible. The volumes that's added by Herzog de Meuron, they float above the walls, so you can actually peer into it. You actually got a presence outside these walls. So and you can walk underneath and through them as well.
And that's not typical for Hong Kong to have public spaces like that.
Well, there are cases like that, but they tend to be shopping malls.
Oh, okay. Commercialised public space.
The only other one I can think of that has a generous public space that you can walk through 24/7 is the Hong Kong Bank, the HSBC by Foster that we just mentioned.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, didn't know that.
They moved all the cores and everything to the side, and there's a big open space down the bottom. So especially a lot of the domestic workers from Philippines and Indonesia, they camp out there every weekend. They have the cardboard boxes, they set up the windscreens, they all sit in their little rooms, urban rooms. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, right.
In a chaotic way, but because it's completely shaded, it's got the beautiful breeze through it. It is rare.
So Herzog de Meuron, love their skin, really great interior intent. Like, what's this one like? Tell me about the skin. I like the skin.
That's what you first see is the skin, right? It's just the facade. And the facade is this aluminium, prefabricated aluminium component, which apparently is from Australia, 100% recycled aluminium parts that they click together. So it's a modular system, and they have slight variants. And they're kind of roughly in the proportion of bricks. So in some ways, they're trying to break down what otherwise would just be a glass box, as much of buildings in Hong Kong tend to be. And give it a sense of texture, give it a sense of proportion to the relationship with the existing buildings around, which are brick and stone, which is rare in Hong Kong. You don't see much brick and stone buildings.
But it seems like from what I've seen, there's brick buildings. So there's the brick courses, and then there's also some sandstone and some granite as well, using the same sort of similar coursing. And then within this facade, this aluminium facade's got coursing happening in the same way.
That's right. And what happens with that screen, it's acting as a screen. So it's protecting from the tropical sun, as well as making it not too glary at night as well, apart from also giving a sense of texture to the building, which you don't really see in Hong Kong.
I imagine most lay people don't realise the problem with really tall glass buildings. They probably don't realise that these are tubes of glass. If you stand on a warm day next to glass inside, it heats up really quickly. So they're constantly pumping cold air into it. And Hong Kong must be just full of that. Just glass towers constantly air conditioning the hell out of it to try and balance the huge amount of thermal load coming in. And this is the kind of facade that would mitigate that. It's like visors, like lots of little visors, but it also allows through breezes through it as well, which is kind of, I imagine, would be vernacular for anywhere in Southeast Asia. Shade the openings and let through breezes.
And what's also clever is that, you know, the brick texture in some ways is a box. It's still read quite monolithically as a monolithic block. Yet at the same time, we know it's full of glass behind and it's full of transparency.
So it relates to those bigger buildings.
That's right.
It's just
really,
not made out of glass.
Yeah. Except these are hovering. They're lifted up and not touching the walls and peer over the edge.
From the footage you've shown me, I love the corners. Like you work so hard in architecture to try to work out how two materials meet or how you wrap a gesture around a corner.
Yeah, from classical buildings to anything, how do you turn a corner? It's actually very hard. And
quite often architects try to 45 it, chamfer it, and just stick them together as though it's one whole thing. These guys have just gone, right, get the module, zoom, cut through it.
And then they kind of dovetail into each other in some kind of strange way.
And in typical Herzog de Meuron style, it looks kind of clumsy, but then when you look a bit closer, you go, hang on, that's been cut through that way. That's been cut. It's really thoughtful.
Yeah.
It's sort of brutal. I always think there's a type of, it's not brutalism, there's a kind of brutalism with them, where it's like, this is the rule we're setting up.
Yeah.
Do not break the rule. And then when you get to a certain point, go hard. Their rigour in terms of executing that is always great. And I think that corner is testament to it. Like some people might look at it and go, clumsy. I think genius. I think sort of stubbornness in a good way.
The other thing they do really well often is the vertical circulation stairs.
Oh, yeah.
They do this beautiful, often curved, not necessarily a spiral, but sometimes spiral, but this beautiful, sensuous, sweeping stair that tends to go through often the most fun bits and often the most photographed bits of the building. And in this case, you've got the heavy base kind of swelling up, you know, through the layers in this beautiful textured concrete. The concrete feels like it's been aged. It's been sandblasted, I think. You look at the texture, kind of rough concrete that you expect from a prison.
So, famous European architects, could a Hong Kong local architect have created this?
My guess is that I don't think they would let Hong Kong architects do that. I think there's still an inferiority complex to foreigners in Hong Kong as, you know, a long-time colonial place. And I think it's very much driven by money in Hong Kong. That's always the talk. So I think there is just a lot more leeway, especially cultural buildings. There hasn't been many cultural buildings in Hong Kong that's really done well, even though there were local architects who did them.
When you get wasabi at the back of the nose.
Why don't you stop shoving it up your nose?
No, Do you like wasabi peas? Leave a comment.
Do you like shoving up your nose? Leave a comment.
Do you have the nose for it? All right, so we've talked about this before. I want to go to Hong Kong and I want to do it well. When are we going? How many people are we taking? We're going to take some of these guys?
Well, I thought we were going to go to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah, just food and architecture. But Hong Kong and also popping across the border to see Shenzhen and Guangzhou as well. So you get the whole region, the Delta region, to get an understanding.
Nice.
Because, you know, I think you need to get a bit of contrast.
Yeah.
Same but different. The Cantonese.
All right, so when lockdowns end, there's going to be a Hong Kong, Guangzhou, Shenzhen Archie Marathon.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for watching, guys. Have you been to Hong Kong? Have you seen this Herzog de Meuron building? Do you like Herzog de Meuron? Do you like heritage? Leave some comments. Let us know what you think. Are you coming with us to the next Archie Marathon Hong Kong? Like, comment, subscribe. We love you.